and welcome to the Business Talk podcast. I'm your host Deepak. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Anuj Kapoor, an esteemed academic and researcher in the field of marketing with a keen interest in digital video advertising, AI human interaction, and digital platforms as our distinguished guest for today's podcast episode. Professor Kapoor is currently an assistant professor of marketing at the esteemed Robert J. Tolses Senior College of Business, University of Missouri. He brings a vast fountain of knowledge and expertise, significantly enhancing the academic landscape with his insightful contributions. In this episode, Professor Anuj Kapoor will share insights from his research topic, Emotional Intelligence in AI, Bridging the Gap Between Technology and Empathy. So without further delay, let's welcome Professor Anuj Kapoor to the podcast. Professor Anuj Kapoor, it is an honor and privilege to have you join us today.
Dear Deepak Bhai, thank you for the kind introduction, and I'm very glad to be back on this podcast. I really appreciate you inviting me, and I'm grateful for you for taking out time to talk to me.
Thank
Thanks a
you,
lot.
Professor Kapoor. Thank you. To start, Professor Kapoor, could you explain what emotional intelligence in AI means and how it differs from traditional AI systems that rely purely on logic and data?
Yes, please. So, just to explain it in very simple terms, when we say AI, that is supposed to, so the image that comes to our mind is of a robot or something which is non-human. When we say emotions, the picture that comes to our mind is of a human because humans are supposed to be emotional. When you club the two, when you have a human layer that works in tandem with the AI layer, that is what we call as AI with emotions. Now, there are two aspects to it: what is happening in the short term and what's expected to happen in the long term. Right now, machines cannot think, machines with emotions. They can just think using a heuristic or they can think on their own. The kind of models and the AI agents that are coming up. In fact, OpenAI released a new agent-based model yesterday. And what we will see is still they are not capable of um, taking emotional context in the mind while thinking or making decisions. And that's where the role of humans come. And when you have human in the loop along with the AI, that is what you call as emotional intelligence with AI. And the applicability of emotions with AI is especially, it's important everywhere, but especially it's important in settings like healthcare, military, wherever things can go fatal, or wherever there is more likelihood of a type 1 or a type 2 error, where that is, you do something, you take an action when you were not supposed to take an action, or you don't take an action when you were supposed to take an action. So those kind of situations, emotional intelligence with respect to AI becomes all the more important.
What are some of the most exciting advancements in AI that enable machines to recognize, interpret, and respond to human emotions?
Yes, please. That's a very good question. Now, if you say, can machines read emotions? I would suggest the answer is no. But if you look at it from a very broad perspective, see, whenever we are emotional, we vent it out or we express it. So, for example, emotion means, say, positive emotion like happiness. When we are happy, we write in a way, right? We speak in a way. Whenever we are sad, we write in a way, we speak in a way. So the machines can read our text, the machines can understand images. So they may not be able to understand emotions per se, but the downside of how emotions, how we react when we are in that emotional stage, those are the things that a machine can read. And that's where you can say that they do understand some emotional context uh, as far as the latest state of the art AI models are concerned.
How is AI being used in customer service to improve the customer experience by understanding emotions? Can you share any real world examples of this application?
Yes, please. So one example which is commonly used is, especially in India, food ordering apps, right? So for example, chatbots. Now, a chatbot, now it's not that every app or platform has incorporated it, but so imagine a scenario where a food is supposed to be delivered to you, and it's going to take, say, 30 minutes and it gets delivered, but it's getting late. Now, someone who is hungry, usually people become angry when they are hungry and the food is not coming on time. And when they talk to the chatbot, they can become a little rude. And suppose those words come up where you can assume and you can see that someone is becoming fidgety or rude, the text can be interpreted by the algorithm which is behind the chatbot and try and talk to the individual in a way which is can soothe the other person. Similarly, so this is one example of chatbots which can be implemented on any service or food service or any e-commerce platform. The other real world examples which I'm very excited about is the mental health space. A lot of startups are coming in this area where they are trying to, if not replace human therapists, but provide some alternative, which where the human therapist can work as complementary to AI therapist. So that is again another real world application which is becoming pretty common and scaling across the world.
In the mental health field, how do AI systems with emotional intelligence assist in diagnosis and providing support for individuals? And what ethical considerations arise when AI is used in such sensitive areas?
Right, right. See, still this is work in progress. So this is not something, and the things are moving in a way that as we are talking, things keep on progressing. Um, so if you look at the mental health scenario, there are few angles to it. One is um, preventive, the other one is diagnosis, and then there is treatment, right? And then there is also another angle of relapse which can happen. So I won't go into that, but I'll start with prevention. Human therapists are expensive, and many times good therapists are not also available. So there AI can play a vital role because here you are trying to prevent something. So there the stakes are not that high compared to if someone has been diagnosed or has actually not been diagnosed yet with any mental disorder. There, I guess the AI is playing a role, but as things progress, you will see they'll become more and more accurate. For example, radiology is one area where there are papers now which suggest that AI is acting at par with humans to looking at X-ray or CT scans or MRI scans. But as far as the mental diagnosis is concerned, it's getting there, but I still feel that it's becoming more and more smarter as more data gets yeah, it gets trained on more data. Secondly, the receptivity, the consumer receptivity. As an individual, you would also like to go to a doctor compared to an AI to for these kind of illnesses, right? And so the diagnosis part is still work in progress, but I think the major leeway is going to come from the preventive part because that's easy and the stakes are not so high. But as I said, it's work in progress. Things are improving and becoming smarter. So I think when suppose we meet after 6 months, I might have probably something to update my statements and revise them.
Professor, AI systems are increasingly involved in personal interactions, whether through virtual assistants or social robots. So, how does AI affect human relationships? Can AI really form genuine connections with people?
Yeah, that's a very good question, but a very tough question in the sense. It has philosophy, it has psychology, it has a lot of dimensions to it. Let me put it this way, without going uh, into too many dimensions. See, what is human-human relation? Human-human relation is when two people sit, talk, right, and spend some time. So many times it's not even about quantity of time; it's also about quality. If you notice these days, when people even chat or go out for lunch or just sitting together, everyone is on their phone, right? So those meaningful conversations are also now becoming more mechanical, right? Now where AI can play a role, suppose if you have a human connection where there is no phone, no distraction, that's the best. You are talking to a distracted human versus you are talking to an AI who is trying to act like human. My hunch is they will become increasingly the same as time progresses. So if you have a human-human connection where two people, three people, four people talk to each other without distractions, amazing. If not, the gap between AI trying to act like human and humans who are playing around with machines, it will become, it will converge slowly and slowly.
What are the current challenges in developing AI that can truly understand and respond human emotions?
I think the challenges are more or less very consistent for the past few years. Earlier, it used to be the availability of data. It's still the case. So if you look at it, right, nuances are so different. Something which is happening in the US, how people react, how they talk, what is privacy for them, what is individualism versus collectivism. Now, suppose you come up with an agent that can solve mental health problems or work as a therapist for folks in the US. Can you replicate the same thing in India? No. So, there you need data, right? And similarly, India is diverse. Something which works for, say, the northern part of India may not work for the southern part of India, or even within North. There's so much diversity, which is amazing. But that also creates issue for the AI systems. The second thing is the compute power. As you can see, there are so many startups coming up which are now relying on, betting on fusion, nuclear energy, because these AI systems need power. These AI systems need energy. So I think compute power and quality data, which is contextual data, is something that is the moment this gets solved, keeping the current AI systems in mind, things will become more and more better.
What are some of the ethical implications of integrating emotional intelligence into AI, especially in terms of privacy and trust? And how can we ensure these systems are used responsibly?
That's a good question now. So long term and short term. See, short term, when doctors also work with human patients, they have an oath that they won't go and talk about their patient's health. It's an implicit understanding also, and explicitly also, it's a given that you won't talk about it. Now, the problem with AI agents is unless there are guardrails in place, unless there are laws and regulations, and most importantly, people follow those laws and regulations in spirit and not just in letter, uh, will people use the same data or same knowledge of that ailment to train their models or other models? That's something that there is no clarity. So I'll give you an example. Suppose I have an app and I run this mental health app where I provide, um, therapists, AI therapists. And suppose you come to me and it works for you. Now I have an idea that you have some ailment and how to soothe you. I also know that what are those times when you become more anxious or stressed out and when you don't. Let's imagine I have a parallel app and I'm owner of that app which sells uh, chocolates, right? Suppose I cross use this data which is coming from that mental health app where I know that when you become the most vulnerable, say 10 to 11 in the morning, you become the most stressed out. And I start recommending you chocolates during that time, right? Unless there are clear guardrails in place, this cross pollination of data, what models can be trained, how the data will get the portability, data portability, right? Data privacy laws, unless that becomes clear, it's very tough to say the amount of vulnerability uh, that is there and can actually increase as these agents become more and more potent and smart.
Professor Kapoor, how can AI with emotional intelligence improve workplace dynamics? Could such systems help managers understand employee needs and improve overall work culture?
That's a good question. I agree on that in the sense that, see, manager is always juggling between that dilemma of how much freedom to give and how much to take it back. Um, and how to get those inputs. Suppose I am working with, as an employee, I'm working with an AI system. And the AI, I work in tandem with, say, ChatGPT. Right? I'm just taking an example. Now, the ChatGPT has an idea because I'm using it round the clock. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Right? So, two scenarios can happen. This feedback from ChatGPT can go directly to my boss or my manager, where he or she gets to know that these are Anuj's weaknesses. Now, this can be used against me or to help me. Rather than that, suppose rather than giving individual data, the data of the whole team goes to the manager. That, see, as a team, this is what I think the team is lacking. This is what a team needs. How wonderful that is, where you are not disclosing what individually everyone is facing, but as collectivist in a group setting, you know what are the, as a group, what people are thinking and what they need. So that's such a powerful tool to actually make workplace more productive and hopefully happier.
Where do you see the future of emotional intelligence in AI heading? And what advancement do you anticipate in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's very tough to predict, but basis what is happening right now, two, three things are going to happen. Systems becoming more, I won't say systems becoming emotional, AI systems, but AI systems being able to incorporate emotional context is going to become, that's a given, right? They will understand. The second thing which is going to become also from the so that is from the supply perspective, right? Where how machines are going to become better. From the consumer perspective, which is demand, consumers are also becoming rapidly or increasingly receptive to talking to AI, dealing with AI, right? Because it's just the way it works, right? So, for example, one example is SBI's or any bank's app, right? Yono is SBI's app. I see my father, who is 64, using Yono app very freely, right? If you talk, I still remember, if it would have been, say, 4 or 5 years back, I don't think he would still prefer to go to a retail bank branch rather than doing something on but GPay and these kind of apps have changed how people think. Similarly, I think these new AI agents will change how people become comfortable or receptive to using them. So from both from the supply and the demand perspective, you will see things becoming all the more in tandem with each other.
So, what potential impact do you think emotionally intelligent AI will have on society as a whole? Do you think it will bridge the gap between technology and human empathy, or are there risks we need to consider?
So let's be optimist, right? I always feel that we can't predict a lot of things, right? So many things are just happening by chance. So the best way out is just to be optimistic about how things are going to pan out. But the guardrails or things that people need to keep in mind is, as we were discussing, a legislation, right? Regulation, right? Those have to be there before it becomes too late. The second thing is, see, as a society, you need education, healthcare, job, infrastructure, and overall happiness, right? So let's, if we take it one by one, job loss, there is a high likelihood, right? let's call it restructuring. So some of the people have to move from certain jobs to do other kind of jobs. So are we ready there? Right, that's one. Then it comes to education. My hunch is in probably 5 years, 10 years from now, AI will provide personalized education to everyone. It might be 15 years, 20 years, but it's getting there. Healthcare also, the primary healthcare, my hunch is that people will get a primary healthcare provider who is an AI based agent, and it can solve a lot of your problems, right? So it's good. The fourth thing is infrastructure. Now, that is something the government and the policymakers have to think about, that how that can improve, because unless that improves, the overall happiness is still dicey. One last thing is, will it make society come together? That I'm not sure about, because if I become very, just imagine my day, right? Say in India, right? I wake up and I'm living by myself, or suppose I'm living with a spouse and a family, everyone is going for work. I am working from home. Let's imagine we are not going out. I'm by myself in my room. I can order food through Swiggy. I can order fruits through Big Basket. I can order an Uber, an app. So, what I'm trying to say here is things are becoming convenient. So, it's not making me talk to a lot of people. Is that good? It's good in the sense you can leave all the mundane tasks for the AI, right, and save that time to have quality discussions. But if even I'm not spending that time, quality time with humans, and I'm actually consuming more or streaming more, then actually my hunch is the society will actually become more isolated, and mental health space will see a lot of burden coming up. But I'll tend to be more optimistic, but one has to be cautious as well. Cautious optimism is something that one can think of.
Professor Anuj, my last question. What advice would you give to tech developers or organizations working on incorporating emotional intelligence into their AI systems? And how can they ensure that the technology is both effective and ethical?
Right. So one thing I have to say is how much, engineers or product managers or AI developers can do. They don't have much power, and ultimately, these are the steps which have to be taken collectively by the government, companies, industry, and then the firm, right? But until that happens, I would suggest two things to keep in mind if I am a software developer or I am in a firm who is building these models. A Try and build something which is a product or an agent that you would like to use, right? So empathize with what you are building. So build as if you are building for yourself, not for others. The second thing which I will suggest is, even if you are building something, um, probably have guardrails in place. These can be internal guardrails, right? That, hey, I won't, this is something which is non-negotiable, something like that. I won't use internal data, or I won't use, I'll keep privacy in mind. And the third thing, which is very important as a developer, is making sure that I have a short term vision and a long term vision, right? So, whatever decision I'm taking, or whatever agent I build, what are the long term consequences of this agent on humans, right? Swiggy is good, Zomato is good. Suppose someone is at your home and you don't have food. But what are the long term consequences? Probably people will eat more junk, right? Or they will start eating more unhealthy food. Now, can you leave all the onus on private firms? Maybe not. And that's why I started this answer with, it's not a single solution which will come from a single stakeholder. It will come from multiple stakeholders. But two, three things that I mentioned, the firm can keep in mind.
Professor Anuj Kapoor, it has been an honor and privilege to have you join us today. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights, and we look forward to seeing how continuing impact of your work. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and stay updated on our upcoming episodes. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Thank you so much, Professor Anuj Kapoor, for joining us today.
Thank you, Deepak Bhai, once again for the opportunity. It was a conversation full of some philosophy, some economics, some psychology. But thank you for making me think through some of these important questions. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.